Greg Pence there with our Kristen Eskow. Meantime, we're sitting down with a former Pence administration official who's now running for governor. This week I spoke with Eric Doden about Pence's potential campaign for president, but I also asked him about the race for governor and his recent proposal to have the state take over some aspects of downtown Indy's public safety plan. I want to talk about a policy initiative that you unveiled this past week to bring some new safety measures to downtown Indianapolis that would involve the state taking over some aspects of the city's public safety plan. How do you respond to those who might be leery of a state takeover and prefer local government control?
Well, Dan, we know Indianapolis is an important part of our economy. It's 25% of the GDP. So Marion County makes up 25% of the GDP of the entire state. And we have a lot of investment as the people of Indiana in downtown Indianapolis. So it's very important for us to have two things that are really critical. Public safety for people to feel safe and be safe, but then also to have world-class infrastructure so that we can grow this economy.
What all does your plan involve?
It really involves a collaboration between the IMPD and ISP to make sure that we have enough boots on the ground to make sure that people feel safe and are safe. We also want to take over the infrastructure so that we can use already state dollars that are already in the budget to make sure that we have roads that are pothole free, and then we want to make sure that from a prosecutorial perspective that there's some oversight to make sure that we're enforcing the law and that we respect the rule of law.
Do you anticipate if you are elected and try to enact this plan, there'd be something of a turf war between the city and state government over exactly how to enact a plan like that?
No, I really don't. I think it's going to be a collaborative process. I think we're all going to get in a room together and work at it together. I think everyone recognizes that when you have 2 million people and 29 million visitors that depend on this economy and that visit this city, that we need to have a good game plan together. And I really think it's going to be a collaborative process that everyone will benefit from.
Do you feel your opponents need to come to the table with more policy ideas at this point in the race? I know you've put out a long list of things that you want to tackle. Do you feel they've done the same, or do you want to see more of their ideas?
Yeah, I would love to see more of their ideas. I think that the more specific that we get with ideas of how we improve people's lives across the state of Indiana, the better for the people of Indiana. So I'm really excited to see them come out with more ideas. We're going to continue to sell our ideas, but also we'll produce some more that we have right now in the pipeline, and I think it's just going to be a great process.
I also want to ask you about the overall state of the Republican Party. Your primary will be on the ballot along with the presidential primary, of course, and obviously that could mean being on the ballot with former President Trump, possibly the former VP and former Indiana Governor Mike Pence, who you worked with during the Pence administration. Would we be inclined to support former Governor Pence's campaign for president, or that of former President Trump, or someone else?
Well, first of all, let me just say that, for those who know me know that I have a great relationship with Mike Pence. Mike and Karen are friends of ours. They're really proud of who they are as people. They're very authentic. They're very deep in their faith, and we have a lot of things that we appreciate about them. I think it's just going to be an interesting process. My focus, Dan, will be just on my race and making sure that we communicate what we're doing for the state of Indiana.
But the dynamics of the presidential race are absolutely going to be a big topic in Republican politics in that primary, right?
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see who gets in and what they say and what they pitch to the people of the United States of America. But in our race, we're going to focus on the people of Indiana and what we're doing for them.
I want to ask you, if you'd been governor this past year, is there anything you would have been inclined to veto, or would you have signed many of these same bills into law, from the bills impacting transgender Hoosiers to the state budget to the abortion bill that passed during the special session last year? Anything you would have vetoed?
Well, I'll just say this. We're still working our way through all the bills. People know that I'm ardently pro-life. I believe it's a human rights issue. But we're also really committed to things like zero-cost adoption to make sure that the 13,000 kids in foster care can be adopted into a loving home. And then also the aftercare that can sometimes be very expensive, this fund would help pay for. So we're deeply committed to making sure that we protect the vulnerable and make sure that we have laws that protect the vulnerable and that we support those.
Eric Doden, Republican candidate for governor. Speaking of the legislative session, we also spoke this week with Senate Democratic leader Greg Taylor. Our Kristen Eskow asked him about the bills that the governor signed into law this year.
Governor Holcomb signed all the bills that made it to his desk this year. Did that surprise you?
It did. There were several pieces of legislation, in particular the book restriction for libraries. I hope that he would have not sign the 25-foot rule, especially with all the things that are going on in the law enforcement environment now. You know, there was a lot of things that Governor Holcomb, in my opinion, could have stopped, at least temporarily, without a veto override. But he just became a rubber stamp this session, and that's unfortunate for Hoosiers because there needs to be some accountability.
Meantime, Governor Eric Holcomb is celebrating one of his main priorities from this year's session. He held a ceremonial signing of Senate Bill 1, which invests in mental health, a law that commits $100 million to mental health treatments and expands the state's Crisis Response Center hotline. Coming up next on this week's edition of In Focus, we'll talk with our panel about the race for governor and why Governor Holcomb hasn't made an endorsement yet in that primary, even with his own lieutenant governor in the race. And we're just a week away from the Indy 500. The Attorney General has a warning about potential ticket scams. We'll hear from him coming up.